Well, hello everybody, and good evening. Welcome to Turner Talks tonight. If there's one thing that's true about Germans, it's that they like to start on time. So, welcome. My name is Andrea Edgar. I'm the Executive Director here at Turner Hall. And our Turner Talks tonight, I believe, is the 8th or 9th Turner Talks that we've had. But I see a lot of new faces here, and I just would like to show of hands if you have not been to a Turner Talks before. This is your first one. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're very excited to have a great topic for you tonight. We have Dr. Daniel Grubner here talking about the history of the New Ulm Municipal Band. Very exciting, very important part of New Ulm and our history, our present, and our future. But I want to talk a little bit about Turner Talks as well, since we have so many new faces. Turner Talks was an idea that I had a couple of years ago. Actually, Jace Marty had gotten together, and the original vision before COVID was to put together some type of a Turner podcast, something that we do like similar to a TED Talk where we put that out, but it kind of morphed into something where we bring people together and in person, and we believe in education with the principles of sound mind and sound body. Wanted to have something where people could come together at no charge and listen on a variety of topics. And I've tried over time to pick topics that I think are relevant and that I think the Turners would be proud of. They were very free thinkers, they were cutting edge. So we've done topics on Turner Talks on agriculture, manufacturing locally. We had the folks that own the New Ulm CrossFit come in and talk about physical fitness, eating, diet, and how all of those things work together to help you sleep better and have better energy. We had someone from the Wellness Collective come in and talk about hypnotherapy and the power of hypnotherapy. So we're really trying to address some issues that maybe people are looking for some more information about. We recently did a few on ketamine treatments and how that is being an effective way to treat PTSD. We actually have a place in town here that does PTSD treatments with ketamine. They do another variety of like IV services and different things like that. And then our last Turner Talks was on AI, artificial intelligence. That's something that is kind of a new and upcoming topic. So we're always looking for new topics and different things to share about New Ulm, about our history, and about things that I think that the Turners would want to see done. So Dr. Grubner came to me with this great idea, and I said, yes, we want to do this because there's some big things that the municipal band has kind of teed up here for the future, and somebody's going to share that with you as well. But without further ado, I'll just introduce Dr. Grubner. Welcome.
Thank you. What a wonderful turnout. Turner Hall has been New Ulm's social center for over 170 years. And as I get older, I realize how important socialization is. It's so great to see old friends and make new friends. And people support our community in so many ways. New Ulm has a whole lot more going on than a lot of other small towns. If you don't want to believe that, look in the Journal on Thursdays and look at all the things you can go to. And people support in so many ways, giving talks, coming to talks, donating from their wealth, and sometimes it's just showing up. So thank you very much for being here this evening. The occasion for giving this talk about the New Ulm Municipal Band is that the band, a year from now, will be 80 years old. It was started in March of 1946, right after World War II, when the returning soldiers were coming back, and some of them were musicians. And you'll find out tonight why that is. New Ulm has a very rich history of music, and I'd like to show you some of the very early musicians. That's what we'll focus on at the beginning of the talk, and then I'll talk more about the New Ulm Municipal Band itself. If you'll bear with me a moment, I think I have to reset. This has been going for an hour already. And So this is, as far as I could tell in my research, the first musician that we could identify in New Ulm. This is Frederick Miley, who was born in Germany and came to the United States in 1850. And he's probably one of the kind of people that you can identify as the 48ers. That was particular German immigrants who came after a revolution in the old country in 1848. And he, in fact, was imprisoned for a period of time. He was a soldier. He was an artillery soldier in Germany in the 1840s. Came to the United States in 1850, and there's a little uncertainty about exactly all the things he did, but we know that he went into the United States Navy for a time, and he was a musician. He had studied at the University of Heidelberg in Germany before coming to the United States, and he played a bugle, he played a cornet, and he played a trumpet. There are some people who believe that he was on the ship that was with Commodore Perry that opened up Japan to the Western world. That's debatable. He also was thought to have played in a circus, and a circus was an excellent training ground for a musician, because if you think about the circus acts and the band playing, they have to be in sync with the acts. When the trapeze is going this way, the music has to go that way. And when somebody jumps, they have to have that drum splash. And so they have to be really good at their timing. So Frederick Miley came to New Ulm, and he bought some land and farmed for a time in Milford Township. And in January 1860, Turner Hall was 2 years old, and he was on the program for a musical performance on January 1st. And I'll walk you through this. I know it's not real easy, but you can see that this is an instrumental and vocal concert, Turner Hall, New Ulm. In the program, it shows the list of the pieces that were going to be played, and at the bottom it says Grosser Ball, which means a grand ball. So they had dancing, and that was a common musical form at the time. There would be musical performances followed by a dance. So I'm going to make this a little easier for you. And this is the line. He was the 8th piece on the number. And in German it says, Cavatina aus der Oper Robert de Teufel. That Cavatine is an opera solo from the opera Robert the Devil. That was written by Giacomo Meyerbeer in about 1830. And it says cornet solo with orchestra accompaniment performed by Herr Miley. So this is perhaps his debut performance right here at Turner Hall. The U.S. Dakota War occurred just 2 years later, and he was called to duty at the time to be the captain of the Milford Company in the defense of New Ulm. After the local war was over, the United States Army, with General Sibley, General Sully, a couple of other General Pope, were responsible for following the Indians westward into the Dakotas and trying to move them out of Minnesota. And he served as what was called the Western Mounted Rangers. So this is a cavalry company. And he's listed on the list for the company as the master bugler at one time and the master trumpeter at another time. After the war, he went on to move into the city of New Ulm, where he was a public servant. He was a treasurer of the Menor Corps, the Men's Choral Society, which is an institution that kind of came and went. It's a very traditional German form of music is the men's choir. Today we have the Conference Singers, which is patterned after the Menor Chor. He also was a night policeman for a period of time. So I'm taking you from the very early pioneers to a little later era now, when the pioneers, they had their homes built, they had some streets, the community was growing, they had a little more leisure time, and so in the 1870s, the later 70s into the 80s, they had more opportunities to put bands together. And so there was quite a flurry of different bands. The first organized band was said to be the Silver Cornet Band. That was very soon followed by the Cornet Band, the City Cornet Band, and there was a cadet band, which was of children, young people, and eventually the Great Western Band into the 1990s. And that was led by this man, Boniface Friedenfelder. He immigrated to the United States. He came from Switzerland in the year 1878. He was also an educated individual. He'd been trained in music in Switzerland. He directed bands in numerous communities around the area, notably Lafayette, Gibbon, Winthrop. He wrote music, he composed, and he arranged music. And he died in 1933. Wenzel T. Eckstein was an individual who was born in this country in Cottonwood County, just west of Brown County, in 1876. He grew up in Siegel Township. And went to law school, and he found out that what he really enjoyed was being a court reporter. Now, Wenzel T. Eckstein was also a musician, but he was he brought a unique skill to the work as a court reporter. He read voluminously. He bought many books in many different topics. What he wanted to do is to understand trade terms so that when somebody was giving a testimony on the witness stand, he never had to ask the witness to stop for clarification. And so the judges loved him. They wanted him to be their court reporter. He wasn't involved so much in band music, although he also was a teacher. And he was the leader of an orchestra called Eckstein's Orchestra that started in the early 1890s and was very much attached to Turner Hall. This is Wenzel Eckstein with his wife, Millie. And this is a picture taken at Turner Hall in 1898. This is the cast of a play called The Doctor of Alcantara. And on either side, you can see the members of the Eckstein Orchestra. If you know who Fred W. Johnson is, sitting in the front, just to that side of center, the kind of balding guy, that's Fred W. Johnson. Guess what park is named after him? Johnson Park and Johnson Field. He was sort of the father of New Ulm's park system and also one of the founders of the Brown County Historical Society. And Wenzel Eckstein is two persons towards his left, our right, as the director of this orchestra. This is Joseph Hofmeister. He was born in Bohemia and immigrated to the United States in 1881, came to Milford and grew up there. And he went to Wenzel Eckstein for music instructions. He is probably, arguably, New Ulm's most beloved teacher of music. He had many classes, he taught many students, and this is private teaching, it's not through the school system. He was the first conductor of a military band in New Ulm. At this time, now we're talking about 1890, and the bands take a change in direction. The musicians in New Ulm enlist in the National Guard. New Ulm has had a militia or a military company for almost its entire existence, at least since 1863, when the New Ulm Battery, formerly known as Berg's Battery, was founded. They got a gift of a howitzer, a cannon, from the Turners in Cincinnati, where the Turner people who founded New Ulm came from. They were given a cannon that is thought to have been involved in the Battle of Fort Ridgely during the 1862 war. And they had a third cannon yet after that. And Joseph Bobletter was a military man who'd been in the Army during the Civil War, and then the Navy, and then the Army again. And he came to New Ulm. He was an entrepreneur. He was the editor of a newspaper. He owned a drugstore. But he also became the founder of a military company. So when the legislature of the state of Minnesota started the National Guard, he was ready with a company all ready to go. And it became one of the first companies in the Minnesota National Guard. And so the 2nd Regiment of the Minnesota National Guard, with a company based in New Ulm, needed a band, and they took this great Western band that I mentioned and made it the Minnesota National Guard band. So if you look in old newspapers, you'll find the 2nd Regiment band, and Joseph Huffmeister became the director of that. He, the band was deployed a couple of times, once to the border of Mexico before the United States entered the First World War. In 1923, the band, or the regimental headquarters was moved to Faribault. And so the company was changed and the band was changed. It became soon known as the 205th Infantry Band. And about that time, Joseph Huffmeister was recruited to Springfield, Minnesota, and he became the director of the Orpheus Band over there. He had 9 sons and a couple of daughters, and he taught each of his sons to become professional musicians. This is a family of musicians, and at least 5 of those Hoffmeisters were members of the Whoopi John Concertino Orchestra. This is an example of one of the bands that Joseph Hoffmeister had, where he taught students. And I want you to take notice of the instruments here. You don't have to look at the knickers that the boys are wearing, but a lot of violins, a couple of trombones, and cornets. These are not trumpets, these are cornets. They're a lot shorter than a trumpet. If we have time later on, or if you're interested, I can show you the difference. You'll have to ask, though. They're clarinets, and I think the young man way to the left in the back row probably has a wooden flute. And this is the Hoffmeister Band in front of the National Guard Armory in New Ulm in 1917. And here you can see the bass drum that says Hoffmeister, New Ulm, Minnesota. And you can get an idea of the kind of instruments that were played at that time. This is what you would call a wind band. It has a lot of brass instruments. It has woodwinds in the front row, and it has percussion. That's a form of a band that has existed to this day. So this is a photograph of the 2nd Regiment Band of the Minnesota National Guard. Again, you see Joseph Hoffmeister standing up at the center in the back row. Way over to the left, sitting down at the bottom, is Peter Kitzberger, the first of 3 Peter Kitzbergers who were musicians. And way over on this side is Henry Kitzberger of the same family. And this is the 205th Infantry Band in 1924 at Camp Ripley, another National Guard band.
Yeah, were those bands all, they weren't all from New Ulm, right? Were the regimental bands around the city?
These regimental bands that I'm showing you are mainly from New Ulm.
They are, okay.
Yeah. There was some variability in that. For example, when the very first time that the 2nd Regiment needed a band, they looked to a band down in southern Minnesota, south of Mankato, forget the city it was. And they were for a little while before they were mustered out. And a little bit later it was New Ulm. So the devil is in the details. Here's one of my favorite pictures. This is a picture that was taken of the student orchestra at New Ulm High School in 1927. On this photograph are 8 people who became professional musicians. And I'd like to show them to you. And this shows you where music was going in New Ulm in the early 20th century. This is about the time that Opie John Wilford was showing up on radio in the Twin Cities. And his brother Eddie Wilford had a band that was located here in New Ulm, out on North State Street, just before 5th North. You see that house that has the treble clef on it? That was Eddie Wilford's home. It's still there today. I saw it yesterday. I'm going to start at the back row, top, closest to me. That's Benjamin Kitzberger. He grew up just on a farm southeast of Klossner among the Kitzberger family, first generation American. He studied at McPhail Music Institute in the Twin Cities and was a professional music teacher. Next is Anthony Simmet, but the next musician is the 3rd one over from the left. That's Raymond Meidel. He was the band instructor at the Catholic schools in Rome from 1930 until about 1968 or 69. And he was my music teacher from 5th grade tonette until I was a junior in high school playing the trumpet. That's it for the back row. 2nd row is Harry G. Dirks. He was the director of the orchestra, and he was the principal of the high school. And I can't say that he was a professional musician, but he was certainly very dedicated to the music program. I have a photograph of an aunt of mine who in about 1937 was a member of the girls drum and bugle corps that Principal Dirks started. Up until now, the only girl or woman you've seen in these photographs was Millie Eckstein. Up till now, they've all been men, haven't they? Immediately to the left, our right of Harry Dirks, is Ordell Wagner. You might remember her as Mrs. Harley Schneider. Harley Schneider was the engineer for the city of New Ulm for many years. And Ordell became a piano teacher. This is an example of another sort of position. I've learned to think of New Ulm as having a really extensive music industry. And music teachers really got started at this time largely because of McPhail School of Music. I counted about 6 people from Brown County who studied there and came back and taught in the schools. It started to put music education on a solid footing with trained educators. Ordell Wagner was an example of somebody who taught music in her home. I've taken piano lessons in a music teacher's home in recent years during my retirement. The next person over to that side of Ordell is Frank Heck. Now, if you can compartmentalize Frank Heck and what he did for our community, I want you to tell me, because he was, I call him a Renaissance man. He started as a country school teacher. He went to the school to higher education in Mankato. He became a school administrator and an accountant for the New Ulm Public Schools. He was a musician. As you can see here, he's learned to play the violin. An uncle purchased a violin for him when he was a young man, and he took lessons from a student from McPhail, who came down to New Ulm on weekends, a moonlighter, as they call them. There's a connection between Wenzel Eckstein, the director of the orchestra, and Frank Heck. He played in that orchestra in the 1920s. And then, about World War II, orchestra music, violins, kind of went away. After about 1946, you don't see kids in New Ulm High School yearbooks playing violins anymore as in the school program. More to say about that, especially if you're interested afterwards.
Dan, Frank was the guy that was, like when we first moved to New Ulm, it was still a New Ulm orchestra. Is that the same guy?
Yes.
And he
Yes.
was ancient then. But...
Okay. The cat's out of the bag.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you. In 1976, it was the bicentennial year. Frank had, in the attic or tucked away somewhere, he had a musical score that was given to him by Wenzel Eckstein in the 1920s. And it was the musical score from The Doctor of Alcantara. That play, that operetta that I showed you a few minutes ago. Okay? And Wenzel Eckstein said, I hope someday somebody will take this score and redo this operetta for New Ulm. So Frank Heck took that seriously. And I'm talking about music for a piano. He arranged it so that it could be, he had a piece for violins, a piece for flutes, he had a piece for cellos, he had a piece for percussion. He wrote all that. And in 1976, he produced and they performed The Doctor of Alcantara on the stage over here at what's now State Street Theater. At that time, it was New Ulm Junior High School. I think that's pretty cool. And from that, he rejuvenated the New Ulm Area Civic Orchestra, of which there are people, I don't know if I see anybody in the room today, but there are people still playing music today who've been part of that. And I want to tell you, if you think that music isn't today what it has been in the past, everybody will have their own opinion about that. But I'd like to tell you that today in New Ulm, so anywhere between 300 and 100 children are learning to play the violin. Do you have any idea of that? Paula Anderson created a violin school, and it's been turned into a nonprofit organization owned by parents to teach children to play string instruments. And they have a summer camp every year at I believe it's the Brown County Fair, and I saw several of them perform solos at the Pro Musica concerts up at the college just a month or two ago. So string music is alive in New Ulm. I ain't done with this picture yet. There's lots more to go. So I told you about Frank Heck. Right next to him is Virgil Wagner, Swede Wagner, who was an old-time musician. And next to him is Harold Leffelmacher, the Bard of the Bass Horn. More can be said about that too. We have the Harold Leffelmacher expert in the room here tonight. And then next to him is Edward Slim Pulse. And next to him is Ellsworth Baywager, who was one of the big musicians. He went to Hollywood and played music in many movies and came back to New Ulm for the Baywager band. So when World War II broke out, we had a 205th Infantry Band, and a lot of musicians in the band, and these were individuals who first were musicians and not soldiers. They did have to learn how to fire a pistol and practice on the pistol firing range, and they had to go to camp 2 weeks every year, just as all the National Guards people do. But when it came to the time where they needed people to be drafted into the military, those who were eligible for the draft got drafted or volunteered, and those who were not eligible or had a deferment stayed home. And the ones who stayed home created this band, and they called it the Pioneer Band. Now, I don't know if I can help you with this, but right over here on the left is Raymond Meidel, the director. If you count in the front row, seated 1, 2, 3, 4 is Frank Hack. Next to him is Donald Glover. Maybe New Ulm's longest lived musician. He started playing in the Eddie Wilford Band when he was in high school in the 1930s. He died in 2021, and he had been a member of the New Ulm Municipal Band for 75 years. Donald Glover. Right next to Don. Oh, let's see. Well, you know, Red Martinka's in there, and Pat Swalk is in there, and this is Peter Kitzberger the first, way over here on the left. This is a civilian band. Peter Kitzberger is wearing sergeant stripes. These are military uniforms. These people are used to being in the Army, being in the National Guard. And so their uniforms reflect the times that they were in. And, you know, you'll recognize numerous other individuals on that group. So, at the end of the war, the municipal band started. First, I want to tell you that the middle of the century, 1954, is New Ulm's centennial year. And it's really kind of the heyday of the musical industry in New Ulm. There are lots of old-time bands, dance bands, and they're driving around the country. And they're known in Kansas, and they're known in Wisconsin and Texas. Harold Leffelmacher would spend 300 days a year on the road getting gigs to play in ballrooms all around the Midwest. And on August something, in 1954, a magazine journalist came from Collier's Magazine, along with a photographer, and they asked as many musicians and music students as possible to come to Johnson Park that evening and have a photograph taken. 512 musicians. And guess what? 12 bands were on the road that night. They weren't even there. So, you know, maybe 1 out of 10 people in New Ulm played an instrument. And the writer said that there's a tradition in New Ulm that when the kids grew up and were of age enough to begin to study music, parents would ask them if they wanted an instrument or $10. And if they said $10, they were written out of their will. They were disowned. So this is the height of the music industry. So I think if you look here in the second row from the back, Up here on the left is the Holy Trinity High School band. The guy in the white uniform up there towards the middle is Ray Meidel. The next band over is the New Ulm Municipal Band, and the next band over is the New Ulm High School Band. And I can read that off of the drums. And I think there are only 2 people on this picture we know the names of. So if you can identify any of these people, please let me know. We have a picture in a notebook, a 3-ring binder over here on the table, and you're free to look through that afterwards. So here's a photograph of Peter Kitzberger, the first, and he's wearing a uniform that was the first uniform of the New Ulm Municipal Band when it started in 1946. It started because there were so many musicians who just needed to play their musical instruments. They needed to come together. It was also, to some degree, a social institution. The band would have banquets to celebrate their 10th birthday and their 20th anniversary and their 30th and so on. It was a day when television was real new. There weren't any CDs or DVDs or internet, and so people made a lot of their own entertainment. And if you think about it, before there were phonographs, the only way to hear good music was to hear it live. You had to do it yourself or find somebody else who could do it. Maybe you had a music box or a player piano or something like that, but we're fortunate to live in the time we do. This is a photograph of the New Ulm Municipal Band to give you an idea of how it's put together. It would be called a wind band. It has brass instruments, the deep ones, trombone, bass, sousaphone, the higher ones, the trumpets, the woodwinds, which are the clarinets, the flutes, piccolos, saxophones, and percussion, you can see in the back. This is on the stage at the community center, which is the backup venue when it's raining outside, because most of the performances are outdoors. And that's meant to be. There's a state law that was started in about 1943. The electorate of New Ulm approved for the city to exact or to levy a tax to pay for musical entertainment. And the law said a lot about outdoor concerts. That's important. It's very democratic if you think about it. If the concert is in park, a public park, everybody can come to it. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to buy a ticket. So the band opened its new season Tuesday night this week. It was the last Tuesday in March with rehearsals, and the first performances are on Memorial Day. Think about the tradition in America that Memorial Day is, to remember our war dead. And every town has veterans come together, they march, they present the flags. They have an oration, a lot of times the Gettysburg Address, maybe another speaker. They have a band to play music, patriotic music, the national anthem, very possibly the Battle Hymn of the Republic, remembering the Civil War. They'll have a chorus, and here you see the Concord Singers. And they'll have a military salute. In most cities around the country, that's a rifle salute. In New Ulm, Minnesota, it's a Civil War era battery giving a salute with cannons. A lot of us believe there's no other city in the United States that does that. And we have a couple of ways of figuring out how, and maybe by the next time I give this talk, I'll have that figured out. So we really cherish our militia. The New Ulm Battery was started in 1863, a year after New Ulm had to defend itself. And it's never been decommissioned. It's never been decommissioned. It still holds its commission. Very grateful to the volunteers who do that. Here's an example of the band in the background and the battery playing together Riverside Park. That's a concert form that we use some summers. We did last summer. This is one of the battery musician who's playing a bugle. And if you want to get into it afterwards, I'll be prepared to tell you the difference between a bugle, a cornet, and a trumpet. These are the saxophones in the band, the clarinets, woodwinds. There's Don Wilford. This is Mary Marty Borstead on saxophone. Many of these photographs are graciously donated to our project by Carolyn Marty Smith. This is her sister. This is the sousaphone being played by Phil Meidel from the Meidel music family. And you can see just on the edge, over there on the left, is Robert Troutloff, another 90s something, who played in the band until a few years ago, who played a bass trombone. And this is at Harmon Park. Here's the percussion. Here's the band at German Park, where most of its performances in the summer occur in January and July, and they play on Wednesday evenings after rehearsals on Tuesdays. And this is a nice turnout. This is in 2000, when you can see the uniforms they wore at the time. They're getting ready just then to go on a trip to Germany. And here they are, photographed at the Almerminster Cathedral in Ulm, Germany. They went for a celebration of the other Hermann monument in Detmold, Germany. We have the second one. They had the first one. Last summer, we had a joint concert with the Meyer Grove Community Band, a band from a very small town up in Stearns County, northwest of St. Cloud. And we had gone up to St. Cloud to play with them the year before, and then they came to New Ulm last summer to play with us at State Street Theater. And when we really want to have fun, we have fun all the time, but we play the 1812 Overture at Harmon Park during Hermann Fest. This is written by Tchaikovsky in the 19th century when Russia celebrated the defeat of Napoleon, and Napoleon's armies left Russia to go back to France. And the score includes cannon fire, and it includes church bells. And in 2013, for the first time, they had the cannon fire and the band together. The band plays an arrangement for a concert band. And we have 2 weeks off in the month of August to rest and relax, and then we get together for 3 weeks to rehearse for this performance. And when it's all over, it's kind of like, whew, did we have a good time? And one year, I understand that they got some of the churches in New Ulm to ring their church bells. That's also something that Tchaikovsky wrote into this score. So there's a little bit of an advertisement for the New Ulm Municipal Band. If you want to warm up that old instrument, I've been retired for a few years, and my wife said to me, you should go play in the New Ulm Municipal Band. Was that some kind of a message? and I love it. It's been a lot of fun. It's about my 5th year back now, I think. I played with the band in 1971 during my summer vacation from college. We played this is called Thunder in the Valley, when the cannons and the band play together. The New Ulm Battery plays. It turns out that the National Guard in New Ulm is the headquarters company of the 125th Field Artillery. So we have an artillery company in the National Guard headquartered in our armory down here, and we have an artillery company as old as 1863. That's a citizen militia, volunteer militia. I think that's pretty cool. I would like to thank these people and organizations for supporting this talk. I would like to invite you to come hear us play. We keep notices in the newspaper as when we have performances. Come to Memorial Day ceremonies. If there's someone you'd love to remember, come to a Herman Fest. If you want to drink beer while you're listening to the band. It isn't free, like it is here tonight. We're writing a book about the history of the New Ulm Municipal Band, and one of the ways that we're trying to pay for it is through pre-publication sales. So you can order a book if you wish. I'll be up here to talk to anybody who wants to speak afterwards. I'll be up here to take orders. I'll give you a proof of purchase so that if we forget about you a year from now and don't send you a book, you can say, "Where's my book?" $25, and it's a great gift idea. Okay. Thank you very much for this evening, and I'll take.
No music, you don't have an instrument?
Gee whiz, the complexity. One of these, I'm actually going to give this talk, or similar talks, about 6 times this year to different audiences, and this is the second one. And the first one, I thought I'd bring my instrument along, but I had so much stuff to lug along as it was. But yeah, that'd be a great idea.
What is your?
Yeah, what is
I play a baritone. It's like a mini tuba. That's what I tell people. I played trumpet in school, and Mr. Meidel switched me over to baritone at that time. And in 1971, I sat next to Eddie Peck. I had no idea the magnitude of the musician I was sitting next to. He and I both played E-flat alto horns. Now, you don't see that anymore. It's used in Germany, and in Germany, music is written differently. They use different keys and different instruments. Denny Warda, during Heritage Fest, took a lot of the German musicians on tours of the city, and they wanted to give him a tip. He said, "Don't give me a tip, give me music." So they gave him sheet music, and they had it arranged. Slivers de Wans, another great musician of New Ulm, did a lot of the arranging. There are people in the room who were playing in the original German band that uses that music.
Dan, who plays in the old band, the Shell's old band?
Shell's whole band has a great story. So these people from New Ulm, a lot of the men from New Ulm who were recruited into the Army during World War II were musicians. They were eligible for induction. And so they became part of what was known as the Coastal Artillery in Kodiak, Alaska. Coastal artillery means the soldiers who are there prepared to repel an invasion across the ocean on the coast. And the military has bands everywhere. During the Civil War, it's estimated some 50,000 musicians were recruited into the Union Army to provide music. They do it for all kinds of ceremonies. You have to be able to play Happy Birthday to You by heart, because the generals have to have birthday parties and stuff. And I'm making fun of that, but it's a real serious need when people are away from home, away from their families. To have music for them is a way to improve their morale, to boost their spirits, and help them to fight on. And music, by tradition, has a real important place in the military, especially the military bands in Germany, where many of bugles, for example, were something you could hear in a pitched battle where two armies were clashing against each other with dust and noise and cannon fire and smoke. You could hear a bugle where an officer was calling their regiment or their company together in a platoon to fight together to fill the gap. And so music had a very important place there.
And how does that, the whole band?
Okay, whole band. So these guys, musicians usually survive. And when they came home from Kodiak, Alaska, they all said, we're never going to pick up our instruments again. About 2 years later, there's a guy up in Glencoe, Minnesota, at the American Legion or VFW, one of the veteran service clubs, who said, you know, we got to get together and just play some music. And so they put out the word, and we got a whole bunch of these veterans, musicians, to start playing together. And they put together a band, and they didn't have uniforms. What does a Shells Oval band wear? Clown costumes. Seriously, that's what they are. And in fact, the music they play is very much circus music. It's very, very fast tempo, very frenetic music, circus music. They practiced and they got together and they played and they were welcome to play for various activities. And they went up to the Twin Cities for some of the big parades, and they began to win awards as the finest marching band in the Twin Cities in the state fair. And they got to a point where they needed to have a sponsor, I don't know, to pay for their uniforms or maybe instruments. And Shells Brewing Company, from that day forward, they were the Shells Oval Band.
Oh, Shells Oval.
Yeah.
Are they on the wall?
They continue to play. You don't see marching bands as much as you used to. I'm not sure why, but in the Buried Blast Parade, the Noel Municipal Band does play a concert at 11 o'clock before the parade, and at 12 we climb on one of Florian Dietrich's trailers. One of those people donates a trailer for the band, and we go through the parade route playing. In the Shells Oval Band, I think I saw them on I don't know what it was, some kind of small motorized vehicle, bigger than a golf cart. The musicians, they're musicians and they're musicians. I'm a musician, but there are musicians. People who play everything they can get. And there are people like that in the movie. They play, they can list the bands they've been in, one after another. All kinds of bands, genres, old-time music, brass band music, they're guys in the municipal band who go on the truck to the end of the parade, and then they run back to get with the Shells Oval Band, and they go through the parade a second time. Fun.
Dan, can you give us a few comments on the Minnesota Hall of Fame?
Yeah. The Minnesota Music Hall of Fame has been around for quite a few years, I don't know, 30 years or so. Down here on Broadway Street, next to the library, actually kind of underneath, like in the basement part of the library. And the questions that come about it have to do with, well, why is it in New Ulm? First of all, it's based on induction of members. And so every year, 4 to 6 new individuals, groups, musical ensembles, or people associated with music are inducted into the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame. They have a banquet every April. They're going to have one this year. They've already named the inductees for this year. The inductees they take applications. There are people in the room who've submitted applications for people to be inducted into the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame. Why was it New Ulm? Well, if you ask John Cass, who's the executive director of the museum, when you walk in, he's right in the front, and he'll give you his little spiel about the Hall of Fame. He'll tell you how to use their recordings. As you go around, you can look at various stations. You're going to find Ray Milo, you're going to find Boniface Greenenfeld, you're going to find Joseph Hoffmeister, you're going to find the Meyer Grove Community Band, you're going to find Prince with the big guitar out front. You're going to find lots of Frank Heck, lots of people in the Music Hall of Fame. So John Cass will tell you that in the 1950s and 60s, New Ulm had a very strong musicians union, the American Federation of Musicians. I have an older brother who played with garage band, and to play at George's Ballroom, you had to be a union member. And John said that at that time, New Ulm, Minnesota had more people per capita who were members of the musician union than any other place, including Nashville, Tennessee. That impressive?
Yes.
Impresses me.
Yes.
Is it true? You know, every small town has to have something that it's the most of. Maybe the biggest ball of twine. Well, New Ulm, I think New Ulm really has a rightful reputation as a music town. People have come to New Ulm to be employed in the music industry. I can name several music teachers who came from other places and to live in New Ulm and work in New Ulm. There are jobs here. There were at one time at least 3 or 4 music stores. There aren't any now. Then the kind of stores, rock stores, do we have very many of anymore?
Thank you.
Other questions? Chris?
Do you want to just get a comment what we learned in the New Ulm Municipal Band, how rather unique we really are.
Yeah.
Other municipal bands
Yeah.
do not take various ages and this.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, Chris. Chris is a member of bass clarinet in the New Ulm Municipal Band. Has 19 years of experience. That is really not at all unusual that there are people who've been with the municipal band for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, and more, 40 years. When the municipal band started in 1946, from the very get-go, they invited students to be part of the band. High school students is what they said. Now, the band does not have auditions. All you have to do is call up director, Don, you're up, and you're in. You have to show up. You have to support the band, and you have to play your part. You can't drag your feet. But the band has adults sitting next to kids. And I've had the privilege of having a granddaughter sit next to me. Wow. What a great experience. And there are families that have kids, multiple generations. There are families with clearly 2 and 3 and more generations in the municipal band. And for the first time, do you remember the Pioneer Band? They existed from 1941 to 1945. No women. Municipal band, 46. Maybe it was the Rosie River phenomenon in World War II. The women started being recognized as having a contribution to make. There was a little conflict about 15 years later when they made up wear a red bow tie. And somebody said, it's a uniform. Women don't look good in red bow ties. All in fun. They had fun with that. But, there are bands that maybe profess to a higher level of musicianship because they'll only have adults. They have many professionals. You know, I think we can hold a candle to anybody. We have professionals, we have music teachers in our band, we have students, and you know what? We have students who are really good musicians. And getting better all the time. And one of my reasons for being in the band be able to do the best job I can in playing our instrument. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like Dr. Gretner will be sticking around for some book orders, some pre-sale book orders, additional questions. He didn't bring his instruments with tonight, but maybe at his next talk. I just want to thank you. We do have a lot of new faces here. There are some feedback forms on the tables. There are some heads floating around. There's also a sign-up sheet. If you have not signed the sign-up sheet, I would love to have you sign up just to get some information on who is here tonight so we can thank you and to let you know of some of our upcoming Turner Talks. Again, we try to do these about once a quarter. We are looking for different topics, and so we would like your feedback on those as well. One of the ones that we're looking to do next is actually to find a speaker on AI and how a lot of the things that we do on TV, social media, and some of these other things are actually designed to listen to the things we say and how that changes our brain based on some of the stuff that comes in our feeds and that gets into our minds, that all that light-minded stuff. So if you ever were going like, oh, they're talking about your broken coffee pot, and then all of a sudden you go on MSN and there's ads for coffee pots, you know, there's something to that. But I mean, it listens to a lot of things in regards to, you know, how we're handling our relationships and everything else. And there's a lot of information that comes in to try to change our brains and the brains of the young people. And I think it's a very, very important topic. So we're looking for a speaker on that, and we'll bring you some more information on that soon. In the meantime, again, please sign the sign-up sheets if you haven't already. They're still super shredder. They're still complimentary shells and shell light. And again, for future Turner Talks, we are always looking for sponsors as well. So individuals and businesses that are willing to just sponsor some of the basic posted items or potentially sponsor a speaker. We're looking for your feedback on topics. And thank you very much for attending tonight.